And we're back. It's me, David. It's One Up Gaming. It's episode 300. And today we've got a super special guest. So, without further ado, just tell us who you are, please.
I am Jon Hare, formerly of Sensible Software and many other things. Yeah.
Yeah, many other things.
Yep. Yeah, I've been fairly busy since the Sensible days. Yeah, quite a few different directions and still going. So yeah.
So, when you first sort of started back in the, I'd have a guess, mid-80s?
Yeah, 85 is when I started making games. Yeah.
And did you start off knowing you wanted to do that, or was it just something that just you were just messing around and you fell into it?
I fell into it. I mean, I've told this story a few times before, but myself and Chris was a school friend of mine, Chris Yates. We started a band up at school when we were 15, and as we progressed into our, we finished our GCSEs and moved on to our A-level years. And both of us were getting so into the band, and we decided to drop out of the A-levels and told our prospective fathers that, we were going to set up a band and buy a van and go and do that instead. Which we kind of bought the van, and we never really went out and did much. And we realised quite quickly you couldn't really make money out of it. And we both had different little jobs. I had a job in Asda at the time, actually working in the warehouse in Asda, which I'd had since a teenager.
Was Asda around back then?
Yeah.
Let me know. Then I'm from a tiny little town. We didn't get a Tesco's until about 1990, I think it was.
I think Asda actually comes from somewhere up your way. I think it's nearish to where you live. But yeah, it came from the north of England down to all over England, including the south, where I was. So that was quite fun. My job was to my job used to be keeping the warehouse clean, which sounds dull, but it's really fun. So you'd get, like, I'd work for the warehouse manager, and I'd just have a broom and I'd sweep everything up and I'd tidy everything away and go and chat to the guy in the baler room. We basically took all the cardboard boxes and turned them into cardboard bales to send back. And occasionally we'd find like boxes of cakes and stuff that were stuck in the in the thing. And then my particular favourite job was in the damages department. So any damaged food from the shop floor, you used to have to put it in this little room back in the warehouse and log it, that this thing had been damaged. But at Easter it was brilliant because you get these bumper jars of Quality Street and other chocolates that had smashed. And basically you could just pick out as many chocolates as you wanted because it was a broken jar of chocolates. So you could get all your favourite chocolates and take about 10 of them or something and put them in your pocket and eat them, and no one would care because it's a damaged jar of chocolates, No one knows how many got lost. Yeah. So we used to survive on fun things like chocolates and cakes. And I really enjoyed it as a part-time job, actually, but there was a period of time, very short period of time, about 3 months, I decided to take it on as a full-time job to make a bit of money. This is prior to making games. And I found it really hard. And actually what I found hard was the hours, particularly getting up at 7 every morning. I found it almost impossible to do. In fact, throughout my life I found that hard to do, to consistently get up in the morning. Because I'm a late night person, I always have 1 or 2 nights a week where I'm going to bed at 3 or 4. And it's impossible to combine that with getting up at 7 in the morning. It just kills you, basically. So I was happy to not do that in the end. One of the other funny perks I found, I guess because I was losing sleep, was if you work in a warehouse, have you ever been in a warehouse behind a supermarket?
I used to work in Toys R Us in the warehouse years ago, one of my first jobs, and I worked about 5 years in Primark in the warehouse.
Oh right, so everything's stocked up. So
yeah,
if you in a supermarket, can you guess what's the biggest space taken up by something? The biggest volume is?
I'd have a guess it'd be some sort of fresh, sort of like something that has to be used that day, because they can't keep. It's like they'd have to have a lot of it to keep it sort of like rotating round, whereas a tin of beans can sit there for a few weeks without it having to be moved.
Well, that is true, but actually the largest space in the warehouse is taken up by toilet rolls, because because they're big and everyone buys them basically. Like no one goes there without buying toilet rolls. Doesn't matter who they are and how much money they've got. Everyone needs a set of toilet rolls. But basically, you get this like huge amount of toilet rolls, and you could kind of make them so you could almost like make a little bed to sleep in the middle of them, and no one could see because you could stack them all and hide. So that was quite. So I remember sometimes getting the small kip in the toilet rolls. Only about 5 minutes, but it was worth it if you were tired. And so I found that the full time was very different, and I appreciate people who do those kind of jobs only from having done that for a short period of time, full time. But the kind of the punishing schedule of waking up in the morning, like you were saying a bit, David, like you get into a routine and it's something I've never been able to hold down. I can't do it, so I'm quite good at working for myself and driving myself, but I'm not very good at someone else driving my sleeping hours. It's an impossibility for me to manage, and I don't think I'm the only person in the games industry who's like this, by the way. I think there's quite a lot of us. But yeah, anyway, so I stopped doing that, and then I worked at a place for a short while. A friend of mine, well, my dad's friend, had a job going, like servicing some lawnmowers, like it was a seasonal work in the summer or something. So I did that for a few weeks, which was quite fun, like spray painting lawnmowers in his lawnmower shop. And then after I finished that, myself and Chris, my making music, we were recording. We called them albums. They're kind of like cassettes in the old days, you know. We get a Tascam 4-track and make our albums of our songs we were writing, which was my main focus all the time anyway. And I was around his house one day doing that, and he'd kind of been teaching himself to program a bit on the ZX81, which he was getting them from catalogues on trial, and then sending them back and teaching himself. And he got a job with a local company, a games company, making a game called Sod the Sorcerer, which was a conversion of a game called Gandalf. And I was around his house one day, and he was really struggling with the graphics, and so I started drawing these pixelated wizards and dragons and things, and put them in the game. And actually, the company he worked for liked the work I'd done, and then offered me a job. So, you know, a couple of months after spraying lawnmowers, and about 3 or 4 months after trying to sleep in the toilet rolls in Asda's warehouse, I was making games. So, you know, and I was 19 at the time, and it's hard to know where roads are going to lead you, you know. But of course, that's ended up being my career. Well, I'm 56 now, so that's like 37 years so far. But you never quite know. You know, I could have ended up making lawnmowers instead, I guess, but I didn't.
Well, everyone needs a lawnmower.
Well, that's true. If you got grass in your garden, yeah. So I think with life, you just never know where you're going to end up, and I think everyone will have a similar story about their own life, you know. And some people work in careers that get some profile, like, you know, making games isn't super high profile career, but it has profile with some people, you know, in certain, like certainly the kind of listeners that you've got. Yeah, but we all come from just somewhere normal. Well, a lot of people, most people do, come from somewhere relatively normal, and to kind of fall into it. And of course, once I fell into it, I couldn't get out of it. Stayed here forever. So.
Yeah, I mean, like same as you. So I was at school. I went to see the careers woman, and she basically told me that she had no idea what I could do because I had no skills.
That's nice. Thanks.
So I mean, I ended up going to some window fabricating place. I worked there for 9 years. They put me through college to do I think it was NVQ for wood machining.
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked out that there's nowhere that actually uses wood machines anymore.
Ah.
So that was pointless. And then ended up going to, I think, Coral Bookmakers, Primark, all these other shops. And then it just turned out that I couldn't afford to live on a part-time sort of job. So I just sort of accidentally fell into the care industry. And I'll tell you what, I cannot believe I've been there nearly 5 years. And you do like 13-hour shifts. It's an absolute killer. So it's starting. You have to like, get up and start work at just gone 7 o'clock in the morning, finish at 8:10 at night, or you actually have to go in at 7 o'clock at night and work right your way through till 8 in the morning. And on those long night shifts, I don't want to sound too stalkerish, but I have noticed on the Messenger, I've seen you online at 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning every now and again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you must be doing something.
Yeah, like I said, people who are ideas people like me, and I guess some people probably don't keep these hours, but I have to work when I'm inspired with ideas, and also there's a lot of work I do which is, I don't know, design documents, writing detailed design things. I've got to do something probably after this conversation, maybe tomorrow, about the animation in Sociable Soccer and what certain game event triggers a certain animation in characters. So it's a complex cross-referencing table of all the different menu screens in the game, all the different characters I can scroll on, and we're adding 3D animating characters to the game at the moment, so how they might animate. For example, if you win a game and you're on a certain screen, then the chairman of the club scrolls on and he smiles because he's happy because you won. If you lost, he's unhappy, you know. So so I've got a list of one of those. I do those kind of things occasionally. About once every 3 months, I get stuck in the most hated part of my job, which is doing all the accounts. So it's preparing all of the financials for the VAT every 3 months, and as a part of that, I have to do all the royalty accounts, because we account for internally in Tower for like all the people who are earning royalties, you know, different people developing the game, because we try and give everyone involved, or every party involved, royalties on the products, which is good, but it takes a little bit of management and calculation in terms of the numbers. And then I do quite a lot of work on contracts as well, so contracts with various publishing partners and other prospective people we may be working with. So all of those bigger tasks require quite a lot of focus, and I find that I do that focused work better in the night time when the messaging stops, basically, and I can focus on just one.
Yeah, you can just sort of like concentrate on actually what you're doing, instead of every 5 minutes someone sending a message like what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. You just get. I mean, it's really got so much worse than it used to be. You know, in the pre-internet days. But now, you know, messaging is, you can get so distracted in a day, and you can frequently look at your computer or your phone and then go, I can't even remember why I turned you on or why I'm looking at you anymore. But yeah. I think I had to come to the email, but I'm not sure why. And that's what we all do a lot of the time, right? So yeah, it's nice at night time that you don't feel the need to be keeping on top of conversations with people or responding to people. You can just kind of focus on what you're working on. For me, it's a creative task or a sort of administrative task. You know, I can do both of them, require the same level of focus, so I like to do that when it's quiet.
But I guess the problem I get is, on a night shift, if our guy or whatever goes to bed and goes to sleep and he's settled and quiet, I'm sat there thinking, I've got no one that's awake to talk to. It's just a very long night. But I guess with you, with your fame and the fact that you actually collaborate with other studios and other sort of people, you'll have a load of people like in America or in other parts of the world where just because you're nice and quiet and settled and calm, they might think, oh, you're online, I'll just send you a quick message.
Yeah, I mean, actually that's an interesting point, because at the moment our communications with we've got an American and a Chinese publisher, and we're working with KISS now as a UK publisher on the PC console Sociable Soccer. And as it happens, the Chinese guy sent me a message today to ask me for some accounting information, which is a typical example of the kind of thing that happens. The American guys it's been relatively quiet recently. You know, Sociable Soccer's, actually we just did a relaunch another update on Sociable Soccer on Apple Arcade. But in general, the kind of like intense work we were doing with them isn't so intense at the moment. But the intensity is all coming on the PC console side, working with KISS, who are UK based. So spending a lot more time talking to them, meeting up with them, etc. at the moment. But it does tend to go in phases. I'm also working on I'm helping another company do a smaller game, like a maths puzzle game at the moment. So I'm helping them with some bits and bobs, which is quite fun for me actually. There's a little bit of after 6 years working on Sociable Soccer, it's nice to have something else to make, and it's a small game. So I'm just helping and advising on that. I like to do bits like that from time to time for various companies. So that's kind of what my day is at the moment. It's going between those things. I'm working mostly from home. Sometimes I'm here. My wife's here. My daughter's living between here and her boyfriend's house, so she's around sometimes. My 2 older daughters are married and living away now. And that's how the rhythm of the week goes for me. And then sometimes I'll about 1 week a month. Normally, COVID has made it weird, and I haven't really settled back into the pattern. But in general, about a week a month, maybe slightly less, I'll go over to Helsinki to work with the team over there. But we're constantly talking all the time on millions of online ways we've learned to talk, especially during COVID. And then I'll go in and out of London or wherever for meetings. And then there's always other things, like I was in Warsaw for a retro event a few weeks ago. I'm going out to Pixel Heaven in Poland in June. There's always various events, different things in different places. I'm going up to Middlesbrough actually on Thursday to see a company that is working with us on the console versions of Sociable Soccer. So it's kind of like the rhythm of my life. I'm travelling around, but mostly working from home.
So who are you seeing in Middlesbrough? Because that's literally about 5 miles from where I live.
Well, we're working with a company called Sock Monkey. So they are working with us on the console conversions of Sociable Soccer right now. So we are planning with them. We're in a kind of although we're planning on the game, we've been delayed the launch date yet again, but we're planning on the digital release.
I mean, I think at this moment in time, you'd be stupid not to try and launch it for the start of the actual World Cup.
Well, we're looking at around that date. Whether it's exactly at the start or not is open to debate.
Yeah.
So, because of the lead-in times, I mean, maybe it's interesting for people to know that to hit that kind of date, we have to stop adding features to the game in July. So there's a huge lead-in time. With consoles, it's longer. The approval process is longer, and you need a porting process. So you kind of our main focus in Helsinki, which is where the main development is done, is to add all the new features, all the new graphics, and everything else on the PC version, which is kind of like the master version, and to do it in a way where we've already made all the navigation for all the consoles kind of effectively working, and then the actual porting process is done at a certain point during that development, and we've got to figure out exactly when that is, when you technically kind of freeze the game more or less and port across. But then whilst you're doing the porting, you're also doing, so we lead on the Steam version at the moment, but we're looking at the Epic Store and various other PC versions, plus we do localization because we do English only to start with, but we're already in 19 languages from Apple Arcade, so we'll update all the other new text to those languages, and bug fixing, of course, and tuning of stuff like the game economy and the difficulty levels, and those are kind of ongoing things. So as you start to pull the pieces together, you then spend some time tuning, which is pretty difficult, and often there's not enough time for the tuning, and that's normally to do with the fact that you've kept adding features nearer and nearer to the end. You can only really properly tune when you get to the end of all the features, and you know. And then, of course, we're looking as much as possible to put some of the tuning online on the server, so we can tune whilst the game is live. And then looking at how much of that we can do and how much of a risk that is, and you know, it's actually pretty complex, all this stuff these days. Games being online has made them much more complex to build. I would hazard a guess they're about 3 times more complex than they used to be before they were online now.
And I mean, I guess with Microsoft and Nintendo technically leading the way, and I think Sony has to follow, where they actually allowed like Xbox and Switch and PC all to play together, and like I say, the PlayStation, they were a bit slow to want to join in.
As far as I'm aware, we can't take that for granted. We still need to get their permission to do that. I think that some of the platforms for some games have been reticent to allow play against other platforms if the account holders are all on the other platforms, and if the other platforms are getting all the money from it, you know, either by way of in-app purchases or upfront payment stuff. So I mean, this game has always been technically entirely platform agnostic, and anyone can play against anyone. We are yet to go through the fine-tuning of that part actually with the game. We're focusing on other stuff at the moment. Like I say, the main things we're focusing on right now are we've made entirely new 3D models, and we're replacing the 3D model in the game with a new model, and we're replacing the 2D characters in the menus with 3D characters, which can animate and bring them to life a little bit more. We are kind of, with the animation style, we've kind of found our character that we're creating for the game now, which I think is quite a strong one. So we've decided to take an almost Fortnite style approach to the graphics, you know, with the characters in that.
Yeah.
So we're kind of aiming to establish Sociable Soccer's place in the market and as an identity actually, and we've kind of pretty much worked out that the gap is in a game which delivers an experience which is more like a Fortnite style game in terms of the way the characters look, the way some of the progression works in the game. Obviously we've still got the card packs that are in the Apple Arcade version, but the graphical overhaul and the features we're adding over time, and I hasten to add, they're not all going to go in the first launch. You know, we're already looking at future launches and how we put all this stuff in over time, much as we did with Sensible Soccer, I've got to say. So we're looking at trying to fill a middle ground, we feel, that's kind of missing, which is a game somewhere between the, well, you can't even call them FIFA and Pro Evo anymore. I don't know if they're going to keep either name. Did FIFA say it was going to keep the name FIFA recently?
No, FIFA has told EA that they want, I think it was $1 billion a year for the license.
What?
So EA have said they're just going to call it EA Club FC.
I mean, for us, this is an amazing gift. Like, we've had Pro Evolution Soccer and FIFA for 2 decades, and suddenly they both self-destructed in the space of a year or two.
I will say, PES has always been, for me, the best gameplay of the two.
Yeah.
But I played this. Is it esports football? Whatever it's called now.
What's it like?
It's atrocious. It feels more like an ice hockey game. The momentum and the physics are just wrong. You try to run, and instead of being able to, like in FIFA, yes, it's a little bit unrealistic, but you can move and pass and shimmy. But on this Konami one, it is literally, you're running along, you try and stop, and your man takes about 5 steps before he stops.
Are the animations running the gameplay?
Yeah, and it
Not a
just
good
doesn't
thing.
feel right.
I mean, I understand it's a double-edged sword because on the one hand you've got a very successful football game, and you feel almost straitjacketed by it. Like you can't change things you want to change because people will say I like it the way it was before. So, but on the other hand, it's successful, and why change your winning formula? But normally it is very hard to transition. There's an argument for saying they should have kept PES and released this as a separate game and seen how they did. In FIFA's case, it's slightly different. I mean, I've been tracking FIFA a bit. FIFA, when we started making Sociable Soccer, it was making just under $1 billion a year. FIFA, including Ultimate Team and all the platforms.
Yeah.
Right now, it's making $1.5 billion a year. So that's the growth in like 6 years. But if FIFA themselves want to take $1 billion of it, then that just rather slash their profit margin. That's unbelievable. I mean,
so I think what they're saying is FIFA are just going to hire their own studio to make their own football game called FIFA.
Good luck. The thing is, we've seen this happen with Football Manager and Championship Manager, and we've seen these games being played before, and we've seen how they play out. I mean, maybe they'll make a better football game, but I tell you what, it will take them a few years. It won't come quickly, and they risk losing a hell of a lot of. I mean, I'll give you our perspective from a Sociable Soccer perspective. So, we're about to launch on console PC at the end of this year, say. So, we've never launched the game on console. It's only been in Apple Arcade, right? It's been in the Apple Arcade silo for 2.5 years now.
Yeah.
And so for us, instead of launching into a fierce competition with, a lot of the market taken, suddenly, we know that there was $1.5 billion market for FIFA in there. We know that PES was PES was selling 1/20 of it. So, I mean, that's what 75 million, which is still pretty good to put it in perspective.
Yeah.
And then I'll leave out Football Manager and the management games because they're a different market. But the football games market, the football games action market, in total is somewhere between 1.5 and 2 billion a year, let's say. Now, for us, I don't see that the volume and the value of that market changing down. It just means people will shift their focus to other football games. So, from the perspective of a game like Sociable Soccer, which is just starting out on the consoles, even if you can get 1% of what FIFA makes, it's 15 million a year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mind-boggling. If you can get 5%, you're on $75 million a year coming into your game. So, obviously, if they self-destruct, that makes that more likely to be able to achieve, because there's bound to be FIFA fans that get the new EA Sports FC or whatever it's called, and I would hazard a guess at least 5 or 10% don't like it because it's changed. So they won't like it because it's a change, so they'll start to look at other stuff and gravitate towards other games, which could include our game. So, I mean, from our perspective, it's the timing is very fortuitous that the market is going to change and opportunities are there, and not only the players but the retailers, the business will be looking at all these other games and going, okay, it's a new thing. And actually, Dave, the very, very funniest conclusion from this, because EA also recently bought Codemasters, they now technically own Sensible Soccer.
Yeah.
So the very funniest thing would be Sociable Soccer going up against Sensible Soccer if they decided to use that as a name. For me, that would be deeply ironic and very funny. I don't think it's going to happen, but it would be very, very funny if they chose to use Sensible Soccer as the name.
But I mean, like, do you actually know what the only change will be from the FIFA branded FIFA to the EA Sports FC, whatever the hell it's called. There's
Well-
only going to be one change in the whole game.
Is that it? Are you sure?
The only thing that the FIFA license gives them is the name FIFA World Cup or the UEFA Champions League. Or, do you know what I mean? It's like the name of the tournament.
Hang on a second. If we're talking licensing, we're going to be very specific. So the player names themselves normally come from FIFA Pro for most football games. There's a body somewhat associated with FIFA called FIFA Pro.
Yeah, but that's not what this FIFA wanted. They wanted the money just so they could have the FIFA World Cup license or things like that.
You know, yeah. Is it tied to the World Cup? Because have they got to change this before November?
No. The FIFA is still called FIFA until 2023, I think.
Right. Okay.
So they've still got the license until next year, because next year's the 20th. Is it the 30th anniversary?
It is, because I remember when it came and destroyed what we were doing with Sociable Soccer. I remember extremely well. It was 1993, so that's definitely correct. Yeah, it will be.
Because a lot of it might be different for, let's just say, smaller football games where they'll go to a body and they'll get the rights.
Yeah. My point is this: so FIFA Pro gives you rights to, I think it's around about 25,000 players around the world to use their images and likenesses to a set of specific leagues.
Yeah.
So we've looked at this in relationship to Sociable Soccer. We're hoping to add this thing into Sociable Soccer. So that means that for example, you get the English league, the French league, the Italian league, the Spanish league, not the German league because that's outside of it, not the Japanese, not the US league. There's a bunch of leagues which put themselves outside of it, but there's a whole bunch of leagues all around the world that you can use, which is good. So we're doing our analysis on Sociable Soccer, for example. If we had the FIFA Pro license, 13,000 of our 27,000 players, we could use the proper names and images. So about half of the players in our football universe would be licensed. Then leagues outside of that, you need to take separate licenses. So for example, we do have a Chinese Super League license from our Chinese publishing partners, Crazy Sports. So this enables us to use the proper photos of the Chinese players, to use the club badges, to use the team names properly, and even the managers in association with the Chinese. You may remember we had Rafa Benitez at one time in the game, from the Chinese league. But on the FIFA Pro license, you only get players. You can't use shirts or club names or anything. So in order to get around that, if you want to have the German league, the English league, the French league, the Italian league club names and shirts, that's an extra licensing deal. Sometimes you have to go directly to each club. Sometimes you can get it via a body. It depends on the way it's set up in the different countries. So there's a huge amount of licensing already in FIFA that they cover. It comes from FIFA itself. If it's simply just the name FIFA and the World Cup, then compared to the overall content in FIFA, I think they're right to argue that that's not. They must spend a fortune on licenses, is all I can say.
I remember
one little thing. They must be spending a fortune on licenses every year.
I remember reading an article about 10 years ago when, I think this was when the NFL John Madden game was like the biggest game in the world. And the EA executives, they were having like a meeting, and one of them said, why can we have this game, John Madden, where it's got we only have to pay 3 licenses. It's like the player license, the NFL license, and something else license, and it got everything included.
Yeah.
And then they said, and how come we've got this FIFA game where we have to pay about 300 different licenses just to get all that they've got?
I mean,
But it's like FIFA itself. It was called FIFA right from the beginning. But it wasn't until FIFA 96 until they started using real player names.
So they literally only had that FIFA license from FIFA. I mean, I think there's something else here about the name FIFA, which I've been speculating on, kind of almost on myself. FIFA gives the game immense credibility as a proper, you know.
It's just brand recognition at this time. You don't say the EA game; it's just FIFA.
The point is, it's been great for FIFA because people say, "I want to play FIFA." I mean, it's annoyed the hell out. The people don't even call FIFA a football game anymore. They just think it's the only football game. So it's, but it's done FIFA a lot of good for their brand to have this game spreading their brand around the world. I mean, it's been done immeasurable good for the value of their brand from the game I'm talking about now. But for EA, it's a slightly odd position because they're an American company. So suddenly you're calling your game EA Sports FC. And then you look at it and you go, hang on, these Americans have called this game EA Sports FC. But they're Americans doing a soccer game. And something about that feels less authentic than a game called FIFA, which we all know that, you know, our football isn't really their bag over there. So as opposed to Pro Evolution Soccer, which came from Japan, which we know is a football country, or other games like Our Game or Football Manager, whatever, games that you know are from football countries like UK, Japan, whatever. But, you know, they are very much, I guess the EA Sports is in Canada, isn't it, as it happens? But,
but they also sub-license it out to, I think is it Portugal? It's somewhere, because I think they were having arguments with how it played and they wanted a European team to be involved in the creation of the actual game. But
I guess my point is that it does make you question the authenticity. I actually had a thought about this yesterday. Have you seen this debate about women and men getting equal pay in football in the States?
Yeah, in America, they've agreed a deal till 2026 where it will all be split equally.
This is, I think it was only the international matches, or is it in general for their club participation?
I think it's only the international, and that's only because the women's game over there, they were world number one. So a lot of more, they sell a lot more TV rights for the women's game because more people want to see them win.
Yeah, so this is to me quite an interesting reflection on American sport, actually. So I did a bit of research on the NBA versus the women's NBA, and the pay differential for the top performing.
It must be amazing how different that is.
Right, so it's like, actually, LeBron James is the top paid NBA basketball player. I'm just gonna. I can't remember the figure. The woman I looked up, and I can't remember her name. Something like Lorassi or something, her surname. Torassi, she was called. Torassi. She was on about $220,000 a year.
And he's on like $200 million.
He was on 500 times more than her per year.
Yeah.
It was like 40 million, 60 million. I can't remember the exact thing, but I think it must have been around about $40 million a year. And I thought, okay, so you're talking about equalising soccer wages because you don't see it as a proper man's sport. You never have. You don't really like it or respect it. Do it in your, sort out your own house first. Go and do it to basketball. Go and tell LeBron his wage is going to come down to like $200,000 a year, or tell all the girls you're going to go up to his level, and then see, because I think that there is a belittling of our football as a real sport in the States, for men. I'm talking about now. I think it's seen as a kids' sport. There's a lot of, you got your soccer moms and stuff, and this is something which is, I know, quite popular as a kids' sport at primary level when kids are young, and I know it's as a woman's sport it's seen as a big thing, but it's never been an adult man's sport. You know, adult male soccer is carried by the large Hispanic community in the States, you know, who do genuinely love our game. So my point about this thought process is, does EA Sports FC, does that sound like from the same mentality of American soccer? And if you ask the average Premier League watching, Bundesliga watching, La Liga watching, Mexican division watching, or Japanese division J League watching football fan, what attracts them more, the name FIFA or the name EA Sports FC, which tells them it's an American football game? I think FIFA has got much more value than EA are realising here, because the authenticity of their product by the name comes under scrutiny. That's my view, and it's unfortunate then, because they're very much, you know, an American company, and we know them as an American company. I think it could even halve their sales. Maybe that's a bold thing to say, but I think that if you look at the difference in perception of the validity of the game, bearing in mind that people have been criticising FIFA on and off all the time anyway, they seem to be demoting themselves. Mind you, I understand if FIFA won $1 billion a year, there's a bloody good reason to say no. But it does open up the space, and you know, for us, I guess the challenge is, once we get those console versions out, and the first hit is just really, you've played the Apple Arcade version, right?
Yes.
So it's getting that basic gameplay in there, and getting it up and running, and getting to build a fan base. And then for us, the next few years are very much about growing that, and you know, updating it and putting out the next year and the next year and so on, and building those things up, because it's easy for people to forget, you know, the great football games out there at the moment, like FIFA and Football Manager. These have been built over 30 years. You know,
it's scary how long they are.
And with us, you know, okay, we've been 6 years in development, but a lot of this particular this particular chunk of work we've done has been about optimizing it for PC and console, optimizing everything, not adding so many things, more like making it, you know, apart from the graphic side, but in terms of a lot of niceties we'd like to add in, it's like we can only do this in steps. I mean, we've got so many ideas we want to add in, and you know, as a designer I have to be reined back, but getting those solid versions out on those machines is the most important thing for us right now. And then, but hopefully this window of opportunity, because it will be, you know, you've got the esports, or the eFootball, sorry, from Konami, you've got EA Sports FC, we might have another rival FIFA game, and then we've got a few other games of which we're one of those, but a couple a bit more established than us, I guess, at the moment. And the challenge for all of us is, can we claim that space in this window of opportunity left by Konami and EA, and can we do it quickly enough? So it's going to be interesting for football gamers. It's going to be an interesting time, because we've been in stagnant waters for 15-20 years, and we won't be.
I mean, like, I might be wrong, but in my stupid opinion, what used to be PES, they've just killed themselves. That game is an absolute train wreck.
I've not heard anyone say good about it, but I've not played it.
It's like, they sort of said it's free to play, or is it like they call it like free to start or something stupid. And you get like 3 or 4 teams that you can select, and that's it. And then you have to pay £30 to unlock the rest.
It's like a massive, expensive IAP.
It's basically just a free demo that you then pay to get the rest. But it's just how the game's been done. I mean, they even sort of like took a year off and just re-released the last PES and just updated the stats. Didn't touch nothing about the game. So the game was in development for 3 years, and they had another year off to help it along. And then when it came out, it was absolutely dead on arrival. And then in the last 6 months, 8 months, whatever it's been, they've done a couple of patches, and it still doesn't play at all like it should.
It's very hard when you're. I mean, we've kind of like been working on the gameplay on the Apple Arcade version and tweaking things and noticing improvements. You know, one of the big improvements we've put in the version we're developing now is the ability to select your difficulty level, which we didn't have before, and we realised we had to add it because in the same build of the Apple Arcade version, you're getting messages from users going, "This game's too easy," and then people playing exactly the same game saying it's too hard.
Yeah.
So we kind of realised that we needed to do that, but we only realised that from having already done the first release and getting the feedback. And I'm sure there's mistakes we'll make in this one we're doing now, which isn't perfect, where we've prioritised one thing over another, and at the end of the day there's only a finite amount of time. But like I say, what people really underestimate at the moment is how slow online development is. Everything you do needs to be verified on the machine, and then, you know, on your client machine, and then on the server, and then back again. And if it trips up at all, everything sort of breaks down, and it really slows down the ability to add new features into your game at the rate we would have done in the past. It's not quite as bad as when we used to have to make our own 3D engines. That was really bad time for waiting. But certainly online development has slowed stuff down significantly. And my point here is that when you're establishing a new game, like Konami are, and like we are to an extent, everything is slower than it should be. Everything feels slower than it should be. Everything is, development-wise, is all of the data privacy stuff, all of the checking for stuff online, offline, all of the third-party plugins you're using now, all of that stuff is not the game. You know, if you can imagine you're doing that across, in our case, we're on 10 platforms at the moment. So there's a lot of just technical issues which don't advance the game, and that's probably why Konami chose to hold off the extra year. And then they're probably nowhere near getting something that they're happy with and complete with. I mean, it is just slower to make games at the moment.
But it's like for me, the biggest difference would be, let's just say, like your game. Let's just sort of say you've got 10, 15 developers working on the game. Yeah,
that's about right. About between that 10 and 15, we're more like 15 now, but yeah, we have it at different sizes. Yeah.
Well, like EA, what do they have? 1,000 people working on the game.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, so you need a different structure of communication.
I think that it's time, money, and manpower. It's you either chuck more money at it, more manpower, or you have to have more time.
But yeah, and that's the issue, because like I say, I mean, we have been slower than we wanted on Sociable Soccer. All of us in the team, you know, we've all been frustrated by it, and of course we could have done things better and faster and made better decisions. And you know, sometimes we made mistakes, had to go back, rectify them, come back, and you lose time from that. But underlyingly from that, the actual systems that we're supporting technically, like they're everywhere in life at the moment, they're ever more complex and ever more demanding, and that does take your time. And actually, even with a large team, you can't speed up time so much. Like, you still need to make a feature, to test it, to tune it, to add another thing in. See, that thing actually impacts on the other thing in a way you didn't anticipate, and you have to tune that and tweak that. And there is a little bit of a technology debt on the online stuff, and like I say, we've also, all of us had to deal with extra data privacy stuff going on, which has also affected stuff as well, related to server side stuff, because when you're passing information backwards and forwards, that can in theory breach someone's data privacy rights, and you have to do it in a certain way. And it's just, for me, Dave, it's so boring. I mean, it's not the bit of development I enjoy at all, but that's the way it's been, that's the way it is, and it's affecting all companies like that. So, you know, all of these companies trying to make new products are going to have the same problems. And I would be very surprised if EA throw away FIFA and start again, because it's a lot of bloody work, even for them. You know,
I mean, I think that's where this E-Club Football, whatever it's called, I think they went from their own internal engine, and then they've gone on to, I don't know if it's Unreal, but they've gone on to someone else's engine.
Unreal or Unity, probably one of the two.
Yeah, and I think they underestimated how hard it is to emulate the feel of their own game on a different engine. And I think, surprisingly, FIFA, I can't remember when it was exactly, but like FIFA, when was the Xbox One out? So it'd be like FIFA 12, 13 and 14, they were all using EA's internal sports engine. I think it was Ignite, I think it was called.
Okay.
And then when they came to FIFA 15 and 16 or whatever it was, they changed over to Frostbite.
Right.
But if you hadn't have been told that, the games play identical.
Right.
And it's just, I think that just shows the manpower that they've got, that they could have had that being done in the background for about 2-3 years just to get it to feel right before they actually move over to the engine.
It gets yeah.
Whereas I think Konami, they just sort of like, right, we'll finish that and we'll move straight over. And they just didn't have the manpower or the time to actually do what they anticipated they would be doing without any issues.
Yeah, it depends on how long how long ago they made the decision to do it, and how long they gave themselves as a lead in time before the first launch. So yeah, I mean, I don't know much about how Konami's operating. I mean, we have spoken to both Konami and EA about Sociable Soccer on our route. In fact, I can tell you, EA liked our game. But EA are very committed to FIFA.
Yeah, I can understand why a massive company with a massive game might not want to dilute what they're selling to sell it. I know it's not a similar product, but it's a football game.
Exactly. I mean, they are not just the most successful football game in the world. I would hazard a guess they're possibly the most successful game in the world over the last 30 years. I mean, maybe Mario's not one game; it's a series of games, different from each other. But they must be up there as one of the, if not the most, then one of the most. I mean, making $1 billion a year is pretty good. That was at least 6 years ago. So, it must be difficult for them to come to terms with it. But then again, they've got no choice, because FIFA is just asking too much money. FIFA's actually undervaluing what EA's done for it, in my opinion. I think EA has made the brand FIFA worth something. I think as a world, it's a fringe thing like FIFA, like UEFA. We know UEFA. We know the UEFA Cup. We've known it exists, but we don't really see the UEFA outside of that, do we? We don't really.
Yeah.
And FIFA is the same, except it's got a football game named after it as well. And EA have put a lot into that, and it's not like me to have sympathy for EA or FIFA, but I kind of do have sympathy for EA in this, because they've been the making of FIFA as a brand. They've marketed it more than FIFA have themselves. That's obvious.
I mean, I wonder if this might have something to do with 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever EA signed the contract, if FIFA undervalued themselves. So now they're getting to the point where they've had 10 years of what they believe was not enough royalties. So now they're like, no, we know what we are. You have to pay over the odds now because you've underpaid us for 20 years.
As far as I understand, and these are just rumour figures we hear, but
Yeah.
I thought they were playing somewhere between 300 and 500,000 a year, is what I think is what I've heard in the past for FIFA. I could be well off. It's a guess, something in my distant fading memory, but something like that. To jump to $1 billion. Now, what we do know is that, what I can tell you is that FIFA made around about 1.5 billion last year or the year before, because I've been tracking it a bit. To ask for 2/3 of the money taken for a license,
Just for the name.
absolute joke. I mean, it is a joke. It's overvaluing yourself beyond all measure. It's totally unreasonable to get.
I mean, I might be wrong, but I'm
a license. Come on.
It's like I might be wrong, but I am sure I read that the last contract that EA signed was for about 500,000, but it was for a 3-year deal.
Right. Okay, that makes sense, and that's reasonable.
And now they've come back and said they want it on a yearly basis because they want to be able to take the name elsewhere if they decide to create their own game.
I mean, so in terms of creating their own game, it's hard to have 2 FIFA games in the market, but it is their right as a brand holder. I support FIFA's right to do that.
Yeah.
But that's slightly confusing if EA's also got a FIFA product. But if they up their price from 166,000 a year to $1 billion a year, was that $1 billion for a 3-year deal or a 1-year deal?
It was a singular deal because FIFA said they would allow them to sign every year until they get their game ready to launch, and then they'll remove their license and they'll take the license back.
But $1 billion, I mean, it's like 6 or 7 times more a year. I mean, come on, you don't do that. I mean, even our electricity bills don't go up that much.
I don't know.
But it's a joke. It really is a joke. So, I mean, I don't think they've left EA any choice. I mean, EA would be bad business to agree to that. EA's got ideas. FIFA has got ideas above its station with this, and I think I actually would go as far as to say it's a bit disrespectful to EA and what EA's done for FIFA.
It's like I can only go by what's been reported, but I think FIFA went in with a massive highball sort of we want this, in the knowledge that they wouldn't get it, but they were willing to talk down. EA just said, piss off. And they refused to speak to him.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, as you know, that to go up that much is an insult. And for all the good that EA has done for that FIFA brand, after all the sort of like money laundering and all the bungs and all the
you mean
dodginess.
Your allegations about FIFA?
Yeah.
No.
So EA has helped keep the FIFA brand relevant and in good light.
I mean, I totally support FIFA's ability to make their own game, and I totally support their ability to withdraw the license from EA. After all, it's not EA's license. But to up the price by that much, to say they want 2/3 of their turnover on the game. Don't forget they've also got development expenses, which is going to be colossal. Marketing expenses, which are also going to be massive. So, I mean, it almost means EA make the game with probably very little profit. They may even make a loss. I don't know how much their combined marketing and development is per year, but I don't think it's cheap. Like you said, they've got huge teams on it. So, I don't know. I just think
Do you reckon next year when it'll be the last year, if they don't renew the license, it'll be the last year it's called FIFA. Do you think that they'll be intelligent and have FIFA in small letters and call it FIFA's EA Club FC? And have the EA Club FC in quite big bold on the box?
The thing is, would you pay $1 billion to...
Well, no, because they've still got the license until next year.
Oh, right.
So, on that transitional year, when it's the last one, so you're still calling it FIFA, but the FIFA's small, and it's got their new logo big. So when they start the year after, they just take the FIFA off, and it's just the EA Sports FC.
I would expect FIFA has got certain conditions in the contract about how their logo must be represented.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't think they would be comfortable with allowing FIFA to be EA Sports FC, formerly known as FIFA, for example. If you really want to push it, I'm sure there's caveats as to what you are or not allowed to do. I mean, the whole football game landscape is a total licensing nightmare. I have to tell you, it really, really is. I mean, every detail of it is. I don't really know. I mean, I think it's as a gamer, if you like. I think it's good to have a refresh in a stale market.
I think FIFA itself hasn't really changed, or in my opinion, hasn't changed since about FIFA 17.
I look at what FIFA's doing, and I look at Pro Evo as became a poor copycat of FIFA. And if you look at eFootball, your description of it, anyways, you know, once you go for that graphical look, we're realistic. You really need to go all in. You know, you're either in or out with it. And we very much elected to go out because it's bloody expensive to do. But EA, in fairness to them, have done a very good job with FIFA over the years about keeping that TV-like football game there. I mean, one thing which I will say against FIFA, I've gone to many game shows and been promoting our game and watching people playing FIFA on these huge stands, and I noticed that almost without exception, everyone looks miserable when they're playing FIFA. They look like they're focusing, concentrating. It doesn't look fun to play, and that's one thing which I notice. So, go on.
My biggest problem with the FIFA game, once they went into the more of the esports, like the 10v10 sort of tournaments, the gameplay has been slowed down that much, and I think that's to allow the ping rate and everything so there's no lag in the gameplay. But when you're playing it just by yourself, or you and your mate, it just feels like you're running through treacle.
Yeah, so I see what you mean. They've standardised it by slowing it down to like allow for these situations where they need 10 people playing online at once. Or 20 people playing online. Yeah, but
to me, it's what Halo did to Halo 2. They slowed the game down to make it so when it was online, it was just easier to keep the whole game in a slower sort of pace.
You know, it's possible to feel quite a lot of adrenaline from games if they're done right. Sociable Soccer can feel quite adrenaline fueled. Sensible Soccer certainly did, and you can't have that with this slowness. Like the way you described eFootball, where it takes you 4 paces for your player to stop running, you know, and you feel like everything's on this massive inertia, or on a slowdown. Unfortunately, this comes back to the current modern technology we've got, which proclaims itself to do everything for us, but actually is very suboptimal in a lot of areas at the moment, because it can't do everything to brilliant standard. You know, things that, like, you have like so far in our discussion that the Skype hasn't dropped out yet, but we're so used to dropouts of stuff, or things not working properly, or things slowing down, and we're accepting this as normal and acceptable. Actually, in my opinion, it's not. It's like trying to get something which is not quite ready to do too much. That's what it feels like to me. I much preferred it when we were, running things at 60 frames a second back in the old days, and there was never any drop in anything. It was always bang on. That to me is a better feeling of experience. You don't have this weird technical things in the middle which might make drop out, and so you drop it down. And I don't know. I mean, some people seem to not care about it, but for me, it's really, really important to have that. And we've managed to get very fast online gameplay with Sociable Soccer without losing the speed, which is very good.
I mean, like I say, I was gonna say, without sounding like a kiss ass, there's a lot of games. I mean, I remember in the PS1 sort of era, there was like thousands of football games. So yes, there was only about 4 good ones, and the rest were crap. And I will say this, and I apologise for this, but we're just doing a worst games ever series, and I included Sensible Soccer 98.
Okay.
On the list.
I think as most disappointing games go, I think it's fair to put that there. I think it wasn't terrible. There was a bug fix where they made the ball suck to the goalkeeper's hands. I mean, obviously graphically it didn't look right, but there was also a nasty bug fix at the end. I think as disappointments go, yeah, it was very disappointing. It was trying to squeeze a 16-bit game into a 3D world, and it just didn't work. And having done, like, we did Sensible Soccer in 2006. Sensible Soccer in 2006 was amazing. The one that was the one where the ball got sucked to the goalie's hands. Actually, 2006.
Yeah, but that one played really well and it looked nice.
Yeah.
I think what Codemasters should have done, they should have held it off 3-6 months and released it as a launch game for the new Xbox 360. Because there was only like FIFA 97 on launch, and it looked like everyone was made out of plasticine. It looked horrible. So I think that game, if they held it off a few more months, even if it was the exact same game just ported across, I think that could have been the start again.
The 2006 one that we did.
Yeah, the one that came out PS2, the original Xbox. Yeah.
And then there was also one which came after that, which was the Amiga version, which was Xbox. But you're talking about the...
Yeah, not the Xbox Live, the full 3D one with the massive heads.
Okay, great. Yeah, I hated the massive heads about that. Unfortunately, I didn't have any...
Yeah, it wasn't great, but it played well. It was fast, smooth.
Yeah, it did play well, I agree. I think that one kind of... I don't know quite why we didn't... Maybe, like you said, we didn't tie it in with a platform launch in any way. Maybe that would have helped us. But yeah,
I loved that one. The one for the PS1, it's how do I explain it? The camera seems to be, it's not a smooth motion. It seems to be stuttering. And then the player's running along, he's also stuttering. And it's a very jarring experience.
It was just a shocking... We weren't prepared for 3D at the time, Sensible, and we just, unfortunately, we'd been so lucky with great programmers, and then we hit a batch of like maybe 2 or 3 pretty ordinary, not very good programmers at once. At the time when we were transitioning across to 3D, and it ended up we were kind of dug in a hole. You know, we were committed to doing 3D because that's what the contract said, and that's what our publishers wanted. But we, in all truth, we weren't really up to the task to do that well. So it's kind of a bit sad.
Yeah, it is weird though how a lot of the so-called 16-bit indie British developers were amazing on like Mega Drive, Super Nintendo, Amiga. You know, they were just absolutely class. I mean, I think I've said to you before, me being a stupid 10-year-old or whatever I was back then, I did not know that 3 of my favourite ever games were made by the same development studio. Cannon Fodder, Megalomania, and Sociable Soccer. I didn't know that they were all made by the same development team. I was just playing these games on the Amiga and on the Mega Drive, and they were just amazing. And
can I ask you a question, actually?
Yep.
Did you buy the games or did you pirate the games? Did you get pirated versions at the time?
On the Amiga, everything was pirated.
Right. So
that's but on Mega Drive, it was all. I had I think it was like 2 versions of Sociable Soccer. I wish the Sensible World of Soccer was on the Mega Drive, but it was just like the Sociable Soccer and International Sensible Soccer.
And which did you play first, the Amiga or the Mega Drive?
Mega Drive.
Oh, you played the Mega Drive first, and you bought them first.
Yeah.
You didn't know that they were Sensible Software games.
No.
I remember on the Mega Drive the way that Sega branded how prominent the. Hang on, let me see if I've got one on my shelf. No. I can't remember how prominently they branded us as developers, because that would have been console. So you'd have had like the publisher logo and the Sega logo, and then maybe a developer logo, but maybe not very big. So perhaps in the Amiga it was a bit more prominent because we wouldn't have had, the issue of adding the platform holder logo so prominently.
But it might also be the fact that I was an idiot and didn't look at the box. I just played the game.
Well, that's all right. Come on, you're a kid. What do you expect?
But yeah, those 3 games. I mean, I actually bought. Was it called the EverDrive? Yeah, I think it's called the EverDrive.
Vaguely.
And there's a handheld version and the EverDrive Versus, which is like a home console version of it with control pads. And you buy like cartridges that are about £15, and each cartridge is like between 6 and 18 games on it, all fully licensed from the development of the publishers. And I got like the Oliver Twins, it's got all the Dizzy games and all those sort of games. And I got the Codemasters one, where it's got like Sensible Soccer, Megalomania, Cannon Fodder. I think it's got a Skid Marks or whatever it's called. It's got like, I think that one's got about 8 games on it. And it's just amazing to go back and play some of these games. I mean, I'm like every other person that's 40-year-old or whatever. On my phone, I've got like thousands of games emulated. And I can just sit on night shift and play a load of like random retro sort of stuff. But yeah, I miss the simpler times of being able to. I come from an era of arcade, like Sega, like 95 sort of time, where I could load the game up, play a game for 10-20 minutes and turn it off. Whereas now, you turn a game on and you got like 3 hours of a tutorial.
Yeah, that can get really tedious. I agree with you.
So, and then the so-called arcade games that they're developing now just don't have that same sort of feel of the old sort of arcade games. But
is it because of how you feel about it, or is it because it's genuinely different?
It's like when you sort of. I mean, I played. What was it called? Retro Racing. Formula Retro Racing, I think it was. Because I loved the Virtua Racing, like arcade, Mega Drive, 32X version was absolutely class. And this was a flat shaded polygonal sort of racing game. And in all the reviews, they said it's brilliant to play, but it doesn't have enough substance in the game. But I thought, well, I wanted to play it, have a quick 10-minute go on it and turn it off. But the handling, the feel of the game just wasn't what I would expect for a game that's trying to emulate Virtua Racing. It feels more like a budget, sort of like Xbox Live Arcade racing game, not its own thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's my problem I've got at the minute with some of the so-called like budget or arcadey football games that you can get on the Xbox, on Xbox Live. I think I've downloaded about maybe 10 of them, and I think there's 2 that play okay.
Which ones are okay?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. But there was 2 of them. One that looks similar to Sociable Soccer. It's like a bit more zoomed in sort of thing. And there's another one that's a lot more zoomed out, like the original, like Sensi Soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And they both have the speed and the feel and the passing. They might not look as good as what Sociable does, but they play well. And I think they were only about 15 quid.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas like with the Apple Arcade version of Sociable, it looks. I mean, like I'm not trying to be funnier, but it looks really good. The graphics are clean, they're sharp, they're smooth, they're fast. The animation's good, and you don't seem to, for an arcade sort of fast-paced game, you don't want to prioritize animation, because if you go to head the ball and someone gets the ball and then your player's still doing the header animation, that's 5 seconds that he's not stopping, turning and going after the ball again.
Yeah, it's you have to be very with the animation. You have to do enough, but not too much. The game has to drive the animation as opposed to the other way around. A lot of games, in my opinion, you described this with this eFootball earlier. They make a mistake of letting the animation drive the gameplay, and that affects the way you feel negatively. You feel like out of control. It's like a car with a lot of slack steering on it or something. So yeah, we've tried hard with Sociable Soccer to make it more immediate to play. I think there's ways we can improve it. It's not perfect, but it's we're pretty pleased with the Apple Arcade version at the moment. I don't know, what's your overall feeling of it on Apple Arcade?
I don't know if I emailed you or if I emailed the support team. It was like a good few months ago now.
Uh-huh.
When I played it on the iPad, it was amazing. I connected my Xbox pad to it and it played flawlessly.
Brilliant.
I really enjoyed it. I loved going on, even if I just played it once a day to keep doing the daily challenges and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It just gave me something to do. It's only like a 5-minute quick blast, and that's perfect for me in the job that I do and the amount of time I've got left to play. Mm-hmm. And I bought a MacBook Air, the M1 MacBook Air.
Oh, what was it like on there?
Right, this is the problem I had with it. When I pressed, I can't remember if it was the X or the Y axis.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like, if I pressed up, my player would run down, and if I pressed down, it'd run up.
It was disorientated. Can you do me a favour? We've just released the update onto the Apple Arcade system.
Right.
Could you check it out and see if that's still a problem on the Mac?
I will see if I can download it and have a go.
Because
it just felt weird. But I can't remember if it was the up and down or the left and right, but one of them worked, so I could go left and right as normal, but the up and down was inverted.
I've seen that bug. And I think it's one of the things we fixed in this update, but please check. It depends on how long ago it was you saw it. So please check for me. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I was getting excited playing on a nice screen, and it's like, But no, when I played it on the iPad, it was a really fun little game.
It's a fun little game. I mean, it's basically the first stepping block of building what Sociable Soccer is going to turn into. So we've got. I mean, I don't want to go into all the plans of what we're adding to it, but we plan to add to this a lot and establish it as a different way of playing a football game. It's not SWOS. People have to understand it's not SWOS, and if you want SWOS, go and play SWOS. It's a great game. This is a different game. It's a game for a modern era as opposed to the era back then. And like I say, we're improving it all the time. So we're kind of. I'm generally pleased about the improvements we're making. I wish we were making them at a faster pace, but I am pleased with the way the game is going, and I think the big plus for this next build is graphically what we're doing with it. I think it's going to really establish our style. At the moment we have some elements of the menus which are still 2D, like I said, the characters, the NPC characters, if you like, the chairman, managers, referees, people like that around the edge.
Yeah.
But a lot of the menus is presented via those characters, and actually by making those become 3D, it surprisingly modernises the look of the game. So that hopefully, we're making a new football game, and we're aiming to appeal to two audiences really, which is the older audience who loved Sensible Soccer, who hopefully quite a lot of those will say will love the modern football games. This is more my cup of tea, which is kind of what you're saying, David, on the iPad side, apart from the bug in the Apple. But our job is also to appeal to new young gamers who are looking for something new. And this is why, to us, like FIFA and Pro Evo falling by the wayside is very fortuitous at this time, because hopefully some of those young gamers who had just naturally gone to FIFA may start to look at other stuff as well. For this season's games and next season's games. And we're now looking at the launching in that batch of games for the start of when next season's games launch, which is basically after you've managed to do all the data updates, which the window doesn't close until the end of August, as you know. So
yeah,
you got data updates to do, and then you've got to put it through the approval processes of the different console manufacturers, which some take longer than others, and then you've got to roll out of the various builds of the game. So that's what we're looking at the moment. All the rollout of everything that we're doing. We've been an Apple Arcade game for 2.5 years, but we're now going to turn our focus onto the other platforms for a bit more for a while.
Yeah, so I mean, I just wanted to have two final points before we go.
Yeah, go on.
First one, I've not really commented in the Sociable Soccer Facebook group because I mean, I've got no affiliation with the game whatsoever, but even I get pissed off when people are saying, when's the game out? Why is there no updates? Why is this? Why is that? It's they had an exclusive deal with Apple. They can't talk about other deals. It's not hard to work out, you idiot.
Yeah.
But yeah, that just annoys me when I read that people are like, oh, we haven't had an update in 3 years. Well, so the game's out. Once the deal comes to an end with the Apple Arcade sort of exclusivity deal, then they can talk about more stuff. But they're a small team, and it's going to take a year and a half, whatever, to sort of port the actual game engine and the code and everything over to the newer sort of product, like Xbox and everything. and then once you've got that over, you've then got to fine tune it, tweak it, add new things to it to make it actually play well. And it's not just, oh, we'll just save that as Xbox.exe or whatever, and then it's launched on the next platform.
You're kind of a bit describing what's happening. I mean, basically, all of the graphics need to be entirely now upgraded to the standard of PCs and consoles, which are a lot more advanced than mobile phones, quite obviously. And then we're adding a totally new graphical style as well to a fair bit of it. We're adding a new stadium, new pitch, new player models. Like I say, transitioning all the menus to have 3D characters and stuff. So, and they're making all the menus conform to necessary structures that you need to get it through Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, etc., and to work on controllers smoothly. And it's working on controllers. The gameplay part works on controllers at the moment, as you said, because it needs to work for the Mac, although you found a bug with it. But the menu side, there's certain protocols of the ways you need to navigate menus with consoles that you don't need to consider on the mobile. So that's something that we're doing. So there's a lot of that stuff going. And then actually what we will do when we come to look at the mobile again, which we will address again once this bit's all done, then you have to take all the new graphics and actually bring them back down to the mobile level. Yeah? So that's another part of what you need to do on the Switch to an extent. The Switch has got less ability to run high-power graphics than the other machines. So there's a lot of that stuff to consider. You got the same game, and yes, we have Unity, and that helps us an awful lot. But there's still a lot of specific stuff to do for the memory and the graphics of different machines, and then all of the TRCs, TCRs, protocols of all the different platforms. So yeah, you're right. It takes time, and also the way to launch the PC version isn't with the mobile stuff in it. It's with the PC specific graphics and stuff put in it. Otherwise, people would notice and comment on it.
Yeah, I mean, like, people want it now, but if you released what you might already have, then they'd basically ridicule the game for being the same game that's already been out 2.5 years ago. Exactly. Now, I think that the current thing that's on Apple Arcade is a big advancement from what we initially put out on Steam Early Access. I played the Steam Early Access, and I felt that I might be misremembering now, but I felt it was a little bit too fast, and the passing wasn't quite as crisp.
There were some things. There was various things wrong with it. So, I mean, it was good in its own way. It had its own. Every version of everything you make has its own plus and minuses. But yeah, it was very much to let people know we were still alive. Really, that's why we put it out. And
I mean, I guess the Steam Early Access, it was called Early Access.
It was called Early Access, and actually, almost 3 years ago, we put an offer out, which is still live if people want it. If people don't want to wait for the Early Access, we'll give them all their money back. I mean, we've done that. Thankfully, most people didn't do that, but we've said, if you don't want to wait any longer, we will give you your money back, because we understand it might frustrate some people. And to be clear, from our perspective as the developers, that money comes direct from us, and we only got 70% of the money in the first place from Steam, so we're actually paying the full whack, including Steam's bit. I mean, not that the money's huge or anything, but it's more the principle. Some people want to feel that, people were saying that, they're taking our money to develop an Apple Arcade version, and the scale of the money that we've got from that Steam Early Access version, the money we got from Apple, and then adding into that the cost of running the game and developing the game, it's really couldn't be further from the truth. The Apple Arcade deal that we did has very much saved the game and enabled us to develop it with all the stuff we want to put in. So, and having said that, also, now we've got a deal in place with KISS, which is a British publisher. We are in a great position to take the game forward with them as well. You know, we've got a nice proper PC console there, which is what we always wanted for the game from the start. You know, that only dropped into place this time last year. So people sometimes don't appreciate the business going on in the background. We didn't have a decent PC console deal to put the PC game out with up until a year ago. So when we put the early access version, it was like to say, this is what we're doing, if you'd like to see it. That was it, really. That was the thought process behind it. I guess it's hard for people to understand how the business of what we do works. But, you know, it's kind of... It feels in a position where it's starting to come good at the moment, everything for us. We just need to have a good end of the year now, and we'll be all right. We're a lot better than the Norwich are for certain.
That's what I was going to end the chat on.
Yeah.
How do you think Norwich did this year?
Oh my God, where do you want me to start? I think that the most upsetting thing of this season is this. At the start of the season, everyone was going, oh, Norwich are crap, they'll just go straight up and straight back down again. And we were going, no, we won't. We've invested in money in players this time, and you guys don't like us, and it's not fair, and blah, blah, blah. And it's turned out to be absolutely 100% accurate. We were just shocking. There were too many mistakes made. You're getting excited about Norwich now. The biggest problem for Norwich was that was in recruitment. So number one, nearly all the fans were agreed the problem was in recruitment. Some people say that Delia doesn't put enough money in or whatever, but having said that, you know, Delia's worth about £25 million. We sold Emily Buendia for 30 million. That deal alone is worth more than Delia's entire career.
It's like that was my problem, like him or hate him, that Newcastle had with Mike Ashley.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, he has stores that are worth millions or billions, whatever you want to say, but they're all in shares and stocks.
Yeah.
He doesn't have cash. So to him, buying a player for 10 million is a hell of a lot of money.
Cash to put in. Yes, sometimes people don't understand that, and I think that, you know, I've spoken to Delia a couple of times at matches, actually, in like half time, walking out and saying hello or whatever, and she's quite friendly and personable person, actually. And I genuinely think they want what's best for the club, but they're not prepared to lose the fortune. I mean, her and her husband are both in their 80s now, you know, and he's always been the publisher of their books. So they've built this thing up together between them for God knows how many years now, 50 years, you know, a long amount of time. They're not about to throw it all away at the end to appease some moaning fans to buy a player in who may or may not work. You know, it's just not worth the risk for them. So I think that what they've done is reasonable. They sold Buendia, which was a terrible mistake, but they sold him. He wanted to go anyway, so what can you do? He wanted to go. They spent an extra 20 million, so they kind of got 30, spent 50.
It didn't do very well for Villa throughout the whole season, though, really.
I saw him play for Villa. I think it was against Liverpool, and I thought actually he played really well in the game I watched. And certainly it's what we've missed, because without Buendia, Buendia and Pukki have got a telepathic understanding. Without Buendia, you've only got half of Pukki. Yeah. And Pukki is by a distance our most important player, and walked player of the season yet again this season. And somehow managed to score nearly 50% of our goals. I've got a really good stat for you about Norwich's season. Right, there's two good stats about Norwich's season. We've had the best away shirt we've ever had, the black one with green trim. That's amazing. I actually bought that, and it was sold out in the club shop for ages. I managed to get one in my rather large size. And the second thing is Pukki's record this season of having scored 11 of our 23 goals in the Premier League
is shocking.
Yeah, is percentage-wise the largest percentage of goals a player has scored in a season. It's the third largest of all time. And the number one and number two are Alan Shearer for Blackburn in about 91 or 92, and Letizia for Southampton about 2 years afterwards. So he really, you can't underestimate how important he's been for us.
Do you think that Pookie would actually do well for a so-called top 6 club, or do you think he's just not that sort of player?
Pookie's a 1 in 4 striker. He needs 4 chances to score 1. Pretty reliably. You know, if you watch him, you see what I mean. So what he relies on is a lot of players supplying him balls, and that's what we've been lacking. Really, we've not been able to feed him. So he tends to like a pass either cut back from the byline or to run onto it that they can run through the defenders from a distance, and that's where most of his goals come from. So yeah, he could possibly work for a top team, but I don't think he's at the level of, you know, a Harry Kane or a Mo Salah, is he? So he's not going to get that chance. The criminal recruitment problem in Norwich was this. So last season we knew that Buendia wanted to go. We managed to persuade him to stay for an entire year, which he committed to us, which was great. Last season we also had Ollie Skip, who was fantastic for us on loan from Spurs as a defensive midfielder. So effectively, you imagine Buendia is like the attacking midfielder, slightly right-sided, and Skip is the defensive midfielder. And then we also have Alex Tettey, who's like a brilliant servant to the club and been our main defensive midfielder for, I don't know, about 5 or 6 seasons at that point, I'm guessing. And Alex was retiring at the end of last season. So we had 3 players for different reasons we knew were going to go. 1 on loan, 1 retiring, and 1 who just had said he'd stay on for you and he wanted to leave to a bigger club.
Yeah.
And we didn't replace any of them in the recruitment period.
Wait, so you guys got the guy who was getting a lot of rave reviews. Is it Billy Gilmore?
Billy Gilmore, yes.
And I think he just did nothing all year.
Well, the problem with Billy Gilmore, you know, he's a young lad. He's 20.
Yeah.
He's 21 now, right? So he's learning, and you're putting him in a team that's not pushing to be at the top of the league. It's fighting relegation from the start. And the players around him aren't amazing players. Now, I guess you could say, well, he does really well for Scotland, or he's done really well in a couple of games for Scotland, is a reality. And the players, you know, Kenny McLean plays alongside him in Scotland, for example, in their midfield. But the problem with Billy Gilmore, under the system we play, which is normally play 4-2-3-1 with 2 wingers, is our wingers have been awful all season. And Billy's a bit of a luxury player. He's kind of the guy that wants to play that smart pass, which 1 in 3 times doesn't quite connect and sometimes gives the ball away to the opposition. And for some reason, his connection with Pookie hasn't been that good most of the time, because Pookie does look for those balls slotted through. But he's kind of not been reading the game properly, in my opinion, has been his problem. And he's been coasting a bit, and he's been at Norwich, but he's never really felt like his heart's been in it. I mean, we had another guy called Matthias Norman who came in, a Norwegian player, who's actually belongs to Rostov, a Russian club, and he definitely doesn't want to go back there at the moment. And he was desperate to stay at Norwich and get his loan to be turned into a full-term contract. And he wrote about that very recently, a couple of days ago. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen now. But the problem for him was a different one. So when we started the season, he actually was very good filling in that defensive midfield hole, like a really combative player. The problem is he got injured about 10 games into the season, pelvic injury, which he kind of was carrying from previously. And he's not been the same player since. And I saw him, the last game I went to was the Wolves away game like a couple of weeks ago. And he's really battling hard as he can, but he limped off that pitch. He broke down twice, injured in the middle of the game, and he limped off at the end. He almost crawled off at the end. So, you know, the guy has not been the same, and we just had no backup. Like, he was meant to be the Skip/Tetty cover. Billy Gilmore he likes to play deep in midfield, but he's so lightweight you can brush him off the ball. He's not a strong defensive midfielder. We've just been had this big hole in the defensive midfield, which has exposed our defence, which I think our defenders are good Championship defenders. Maybe you could argue Grant Hanley is a good low quality Premier League defender. we've had Sam Byram come back from injury. Sam Byram was injured for about a year and a bit, but he's actually been really good. He's growing into the team and has shown he can play either at right back or sometimes as a centre back, which is great. And I think he'll be very key next year. But we've needed basically protection for the defence, and then going forward, we've had, we signed Milot Rashica, who's a winger, who's good he's one of those wingers who's good sometimes and anonymous other times, which is okay. But he's not Emi Buendia, who is meant to be. Emi Buendia is like an attacking midfielder who plays slightly on the right side, who can really pass the ball extremely well, works very hard to chase back and does a lot of stuff. The Rashica, it's not his game, so he wasn't a replacement. Then we got Josh Sargent as a kind of striker who's not a striker. He's like a poor man's Dirk Cow. He's like someone who works hard up front. He's kind of lovable in a way because he really, really wears his heart on his sleeve and tries hard, but he hasn't got the quality to finish. And that's been a big problem. And he's not Emi Buendia either. And then we had Adam Eder when Dean Smith took over from Daniel Farker. I mean, when Daniel Farker learnt he was getting the sack, we had 2 points from 10 games at the start of the season, which is just like appalling. He actually won his final game, so he ended up with 5 points from 11 games, as far as I remember. And then when Dean Smith and Craig Shakespeare came, initially we had a goodish run. And they found a formation. I can't remember the order this happened in. No, maybe we had a couple of difficult. They had a win, and we had a reasonable start. And they were finding a formation, using Adam Eder and Timu Pukki up front together, which was working well. And then Eder got injured for the rest of the season, and that put pay to that. Might have happened a bit afterwards. I can't remember the order of this. And then just as we were getting a run together, we got a run together. That's right. We got a run together. It was good. Then we had Liverpool, Tottenham, and United on the spin or something, and lost all of them. So all the momentum went again. And then he managed to find two up front with Pukki and Eder, and then Eder got injured, and we've got no other forwards, really. We had this young guy called Zolis who's done almost nothing. He's been fairly anonymous. A French guy called Pierre-Lise Malou, who's been better as the season's going on, but is certainly not Buendia. So he's a different type of player. So basically that's been the problem. Like, they've recruited the wrong players and spent 50 million on them. And then got a bunch of loans, of whom Norman was a success at the start of the season. Brandon Williams came from United. He's actually been really good. He's been a really good loan for us as a left back. And the rest just haven't worked. In theory, it sounds like it's going to work. You get Ozanka back from Liverpool. It was ex-Liverpool. I don't think he came from Liverpool. You got a guy from Chelsea, a guy from United, and a good Norwegian guy from a Russian club. But only one of them worked. So I don't know. What can you do? And every week you're playing against very good players. So I don't know, Dave. I've talked about it for too long. I could talk about it for longer. Now. Probably most people don't care, but it's depressing, really.
Do you think that, I don't know if it's FIFA or it's some sort of like, they're going to change the rules on the loan system? I think it's going to start in 2026. And I think because I think at the moment Chelsea have about 35 players out on loan.
Oh, Chelsea are ridiculous. They had 60 out one season. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But I'll just say FIFA, but I think FIFA is saying in 2026 you're only going to have a maximum of 8 players out on loan, and that is it.
Oh, really? 8? Okay.
So I think that's why a lot of these clubs now are letting a lot of the players leave on free transfers, because they know they're not good enough to play for their full team.
Yeah.
But they're good enough to go to a championship club or go to Norwich or go mid-table.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, someone like Brandon Williams is a good case in point. He's young as well. He's about 22, I think.
I think if it's 21 or under, it doesn't count against the 8. But anything over that, you're only allowed to have 8 out on loan. Yeah,
it's good. It's good for players. It's good for clubs to sign these players. Like, these players that aren't quite in the first team of the bigger clubs, and it's good for those players as well to get proper match practice. Hoarding players a second, third, fourth choice is not really helping anyone much, is it?
No, it's actually quite scary when you think, especially when you think that, say, Chelsea, they might have bought all these 15-year-olds for a couple of 100,000 each, but yet they're loaning all these players out, and they're getting like 50 grand a month loan fee from the other club.
Yeah.
So they're making money from all these young players that'll never play for Chelsea.
Well, one of the really big problems with Billy Gilmore is this: when it was obvious it wasn't working in places, he was still being played, and then there was discussions with the fans. I think this is true, that we had to play Chelsea more if we didn't play him than if we did. So he was getting played sometimes, so we had to pay less loan money to Chelsea. Does that make sense? So basically, he's learning the game at our expense, and any player, if he's playing badly, should be under discipline of the manager to go, no, I'm not playing you at the moment, And so I think it gave him a little bit too much power. I heard today on the radio, did you hear about this insane Mbappe deal to stay at PSG?
I've heard of a lot of the stuff. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's insane, but it's not the money about it. It's one of the
fact it can hire and fire managers. It can hire the director of football. It can change the squad and everything.
It's ridiculous. No player should. I've been managing a team myself the last few years, Dave. I don't know.
Finished second this year.
Finished second this year. Yeah, we finished second. No, thank you for following that. It's one of my proudest achievements because we've never ever finished as high as second in the league before. So, and even in my little team, like managing our guys, we're pretty good. Obviously, we finished second in the league. We're not bad. You can't afford players to make decisions because it's going to create factions in your team, where some people are therefore making sure they're friends with Kylian Mbappe because he might be picking them. So you're going to get a very factionized, broken dressing room. And one thing I've noticed from and I guess I've got experience with managing teams from games and from bands to a lesser extent, but people appreciate when they've got firm in the sense of clearly directed leadership, but they also like to be able to contribute to ideas. So that's how to, if you're going to do that in a team, you say your thing, and then you can sometimes you can ask anyone else if they've got anything else to say, and then someone might say whatever it is that's on their mind, and unless that counters what I think, I will often go along with that. So I will allow people to contribute to the discussion, provided they're not countering what I'm saying. But to let them take power over what you're saying is too much. You always have to take control, and players don't want to feel like one player's got an unfair advantage over them, because how's it going to make all the rest of the squad think? If Mbappe's saying, well, I think we should play, I don't know, 4-2-3 because I want lots of supply, 5-2-3 because I want lots of supply from the wings, how's that going to make the rest of the team feel, and how it's going to put them out? I don't necessarily think, I don't know. I think it's a decision made by someone who doesn't understand football. Even at my very basic level as a football manager, I understand the problems that could cause.
But it's like, I remember, I think it was this year, a book came out of Theo Walcott, and he had a bit in the book about his transfer from Southampton to Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
And he sort of said that in his 10 years at Arsenal, he was the most subbed player in their history. And he actually said why that was. And
Right.
He said that in the deal that Arsenal signed him, if he played more than 70 minutes in a match, they had to give Southampton £10,000 every game.
So that's really bad. So actually, for him as a player, that's demoralising.
Yeah, so he was getting brought off near enough every single match, so he didn't go over the 70 minutes.
That's funny. That's like the reverse of what happened with us with Yeah, but these kind of weird clauses don't really help anyone much. You just want someone to be in as a squad member, and that's it.
We'll pay the wages. We'll play him in his preferred position if possible.
Yeah.
But needs must, and we'll just get on with it, and hopefully it'll all work out.
I guess it's because, like, for example, Norwich have got our biggest problem as a team is wage cap. We have a kind of like an internal wage cap which stops us getting a lot of players. Where we can afford the transfer fee, but we can't afford the recurring wages. And I guess the issue with loan players is what percentage of the players the wages are paid by the loaning club, and which by the owning club. And I guess that's where these discussions come in. It's like, well, okay, you'd only have to pay 25% of the wages if you abide by these conditions. And I think that's what happened last with Billy Gilmore.
Oh, they might even say, we'll give you him for free, but if you don't hit this, then you have to pay us a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it's not fair on him because, he's just a young guy learning his trade, but I don't think it helps. It also doesn't help a player to feel like they're guaranteed a game.
Yeah.
Where's their incentive to improve? So I think that I've come up with a bunch of theories about football contracts recently, Dave. If you want to continue this. So basically, I've heard a lot of people saying about Norwich and parachute payments. And now it's only because of parachute payments they'll get them again, they'll come up again and then go down again. And I've been thinking, well, the thing is, there is a need for parachute payments under the current contract system with players, because you can find yourself playing Premier League wages to a whole squad of people that you can't afford now you're in the Championship again. And we've seen the negative effects on a whole host of clubs when that happens, yeah? Where they're suddenly paying too high wages for...
I would have loved it if Everton had got relegated. I don't think any of those players would have had a relegation release clause or relegation 30% off money, and I think that club could have just folded.
Well, I mean, I would have, to be honest, it's ridiculous how much you're affected by your club. So I would have liked to have seen Everton relegated because it would be, I guess, amusing.
Yes.
Except as a Norwich fan, I didn't want Everton down in the Championship next season.
Yeah, because you want to be able to try and
down at all. And then it would have been even funnier to see Leeds go down, because it's kind of like Leeds are falling apart again, which would have been funny.
I felt sorry for Leeds.
Well, I kind of, in the end, I was quite pleased they stayed up, actually.
Yeah.
But I've got no axe to grind with any of those clubs. Leeds, to Burnley, they're all equal to me in my feelings. And then with Burnley, I guess in the end you go, well, yeah, Burnley's the club, but logically as a Norwich fan, I want down there because they're the club least likely to give us problems next season when we're trying to get back up again. So it's amazing how one-eyed you can become looking at football. But anyway, I had an idea about how to get rid of this problem with parachute payments and stuff. So my idea is that if you sign a contract, a 3-year contract or whatever a player signs, there's three wages in that contract as a standard. So up to 3. So basically, there's a current division he's in. Then there's if the team go down, and basically if the team go up by a league.
Yeah.
So you kind of already have it written in at the start that if we go down, then your wage will be reduced by this much. And this is right across the board of every player in the club. I guess you could have certain maximums and minimums, but you make it a standard. And the reason that's important is because that a club knows that it won't have to pay that wage to a player if they get relegated. And perversely, what that means is that a team like Norwich, for example, or Fulham, or one of us yo-yo clubs, is that we can gamble to pay more wages when we're up in the Premier League, because we know we're not going to be stuck with them if we go down again. So actually, not having the security of knowing the wages will go down when we go down can actually hold back offering better deals for players when we're up, if you know what I mean. So
I mean, I think that sort of thing happens a lot more than what clubs announce, because that if they're announcing to their fans, oh yeah, he's got a 30% relegation clause in his contract, that's already making the fans think, so you think we're going to get relegated this year?
Yeah, but if it became standard, like there's always 3 teams that get relegated and 3 teams that get promoted from the Championship, for example, every season without fail. We know that. So that is that's 25% of the teams. There's a 25% chance your division's going to change at the end of the season for every player in the league. So why wouldn't you cover that circumstance in the contract? It's absolute madness not to. So that way, if a player isn't happy about it, he can leave the club. He can just go, sod it, I don't like this, I'm going to leave. But you know, the point is they leave anyway. So the club doesn't really lose from them leaving, because a lot of players will leave anyway. But it secures the club against this.
Yeah, just in case you end up like, was it Jack Rodwell for Sunderland playing in like the 3rd division on 60 or 80 grand a week?
I mean, it's insane. Why would you?
I think he never played for him for 2 years, but he was still getting his money.
Was he injured?
No, the club told him not to come back.
Oh my
but they
God.
carried on paying his wages.
Yeah, so you've got one guy, you've got a club, which club was it?
It was Sunderland.
Right. So you've got a club with enormous history like Sunderland. You're talking about over 100 years history. And one young man who's there for a small period of time can break it. Because of a poorly worded contract. So to me, that's not on. To me, that, you know, if you're going to sign a contract with Liverpool and it's got this relegation clause for the Championship, I mean, you know you're not going to go down. You know you're not now at the moment. There's no chance. You know, even Everton, who've never been down, they still didn't go down this season. So we do know that it's under the current structure of things, it's almost impossible for these teams to go down anyway. But it would be good to have it covered. And then if you know, 2/3 of the Liverpool squad leaves because they got relegated and their money's gone down, well, so what? You know, if they want to leave. If you think I'll stay loyal to the club and we'll bounce back next year and then I'll get my wages anyway. I mean, they're all on such great money.
Yeah.
See why that's a problem. And if they really want to leave and join another club, well, players do that anyway all the time. So
do you think that the chairman and the owners and all that side of things, they're all a bit delusional? Because do you think that, say, is it Nottingham Forest who could be getting promoted?
Yeah, Forest are up for promotion, yeah.
If they get promoted, do you think that their owners and chairman and all that side of things will be like, oh yeah, we just finished 17th, it'd be perfect? Do you know what I mean? They have no thought of relegation at all.
I think that the reality is that, you know, this season, two of the 3 clubs that came up went straight back down again. Yeah, us and Watford. So that's
I think it's nearly always 2 of the 3, and then that third one's hovering.
And look now, you've got Fulham and Bournemouth coming up again. Who went? Did they both go down last season? I think they did.
Yeah.
And then you've got one other who I can't remember who else went down last season. No, it was West Brom. So you'll get 66% of the teams that went up going down again, and 66% of the teams that went down going up again this season. You know, and under this current system, you need parachute payments or you break clubs. But parachute payments give you an unfair advantage to get promotion again. Whereas if every club had the promotion relegation or had the, you know, different tiered wages depending on the league you're in clauses in, then there'd been more similar situations. So I don't know how to, obviously, what do you do with an idea like that? But I'm wondering why it's just not standard, you know. because you're talking about financial fair play. Well, surely that's an important part of financial fair play, to not be paying Premier League wages when a team is getting a tenth of the money because it went down a league. You know, unfortunately, the people who make the rules about this stuff are only focused on the very top all the time, and not seeing the majority of clubs who are fluctuating between Premier League, Championship, League One, League 2, or even League 2 in the conference. You know, they're all different levels of income, aren't they?
So, I mean, the last thing that I'll say about this whole sort of thing is, as a Newcastle fan, yes, we might now be owned by a despicable regime area. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's got loads of human rights issues, it's got loads of stuff. But all I can comment on is how they're running the club and how they're presenting as the club. And I believe that they've done really well so far. And
I agree. They've done exceptionally well so far.
Jesse Lingard, like, everyone was like, oh, he's going to go straight to Newcastle. He basically wanted £150,000 a week. And the Newcastle sort of chairman was like, where we are at this moment in time with the fans, with the TV money, with the sponsorship deals, if we pay players over 100,000 a week, that's not sustainable. It's like, yes, technically we might be the richest team in the world, but because of financial fair play, we need to get the merchandise, we need to get the stadium built up, we need to get more fans in, we need to get more money coming in through sponsorship before we can start paying the £200,000 a week for players. And I just think that Jesse Lingard thought, they want me, they'll pay all this money for me.
It's soft touch, basically.
And they're like, no, we physically cannot pay that, and we don't want to ruin the club trying to just buy players. Because
you don't want to end up being like PSG, do you? I mean, it's easy to do it, but you don't want to be a club which is just trying to. Obviously, you've got the money, and obviously you will buy your way further up the pyramid. But you don't want to just brute force it. You know, get the 11 best players in the world and pay them, $1 billion a week.
Like, FIFA Fair Play has changed the game. It's not a stop, but it's like a slow motion to get to where they want to go. When Chelsea were bought, it's like, yes, it's different sums of money, but they basically bought like 9 new players that season. And when Man City were bought, they went straight in and spent hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, Chelsea finished 4th the year before they were bought, and Man City were a top 10 team. So they already had the foundations of a decent team.
Yeah, they had a club to build on.
Whereas Newcastle, if it wasn't for the 5 that came in, I think we'd have been down this year.
I think that Kieran Trippier was an absolutely amazing signing. Actually, that was a signal to me that you were going to succeed. He's a brilliant England player, has been for a long time. And the other guys you signed, I didn't know most of them so well. But yeah, I mean, I think you've strengthened enormously, to be honest.
I mean, everyone will go on about Guimaraes, the midfielder. But I think our best signing was Dan Burn.
Where did he come from?
BBB South Coast. Was it
Brighton? Was it?
Brighton.
Yeah.
And he played in the left side of a back three. I mean, I'd never even heard of him.
I heard his name just on Match of the Day sometimes or whatever, but yeah.
And the same with Matt Targett.
Yep.
He's not a glamorous player, but he gives you a 7 out of 10 every single game.
Was he a Villa player? Where was he from?
Who?
Was he from Villa?
Yeah, he was on loan from Villa because Villa bought the Everton left back Dean. Yeah. But yeah, it's, and I mean, I think if Ryan Fraser keeps fit, I think he's a bloody good winger.
Yeah, it's interesting because it did make a difference. It's having that volume of. We had a bit of that, like in my 11-a-side team. Not being funny to equate it to the same standard, but we got an influx of like 3 or 4 decent players in the same season, and it makes a huge difference. If you've got a relatively strong core to start, like a solid core, but without any really fancy or flash players, and you build onto that, a decent striker and a couple of decent midfielders and stuff, it makes a huge difference.
But I think that's where Newcastle did well, because not being awful to a lot of the players, the defence was shocking. I mean, there's a couple of players who are good, but they're not good. It's like they need to be next to someone brilliant to make them good. But when they're the ones who have to be the brilliant player, they're not good enough.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
And
I've got an awkward question to ask you about Newcastle.
Yep.
Given exactly the same squad, what do you think the points difference would have been at the end of the season if Steve Bruce would have stayed as a manager?
I mean, we finished on, was it 49?
I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. I forgot. Oh, I can't see it. But yeah, I would say we'd have been safe, and I'd say we'd have had about 40 to 45 points.
Yeah.
I'm one of these fans who I thought Steve Bruce did a bloody good job with the squad that he was given.
Mm-hmm.
It's that squad before those 5 new players in, I would say is a mid to high championship sort of team.
Yeah.
So even last season when he finished like 14th and the season before he finished 12th, with that team I think he was doing well.
Yeah, I mean, 4 to 5 players is half a team, isn't it? Basically.
Yeah. And I can't name any player that came in that didn't do well.
Well, that's brilliant recruitment. That's the opposite of what we had at the start of the season. I don't know how much money you spent. How much money did you spend?
It was 92 million.
Right, okay. So, if you spend that wisely, which you did, you can see the difference. The 3rd best performing team in the league this year, something like that's incredible.
But I mean, like, everyone goes on about Chris Wood wasn't a good signing, but the way he played is more of a hold-up play to bring other players in rather than a goal scorer.
Yeah.
So I think the way Newcastle play, because they didn't have the midfield, like they didn't have like a lot of legs in midfield, they needed someone up front to hold the ball.
Yeah, to give them
time. Allow them time to get up there.
Yeah.
So in a way, yes, even he worked when you look at the tactics and everything that they were playing. But I still think the revelation of the season, Joe Linton.
Well, actually playing, you mean, as opposed to being a bit of a donkey, which he was.
I've said before, I still don't think it can pass. I still don't think it can shoot. But in a defensively sort of midfield position, he runs around all day for you. And he's such a big frame, he gets in the way of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And he just breaks up the play so well.
I haven't been paying attention. So has he been redeployed as a defensive midfielder?
He's basically playing as a box-to-box midfielder now.
Right.
And for the last 20 games, he's been Newcastle's best player.
That's really good management, isn't it? That's actually seeing something else in a player that no one else saw.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, there's little things in there that... And I hated the fact that... I mean, Dwight Gale, brilliant in the Championship, not good enough for the Premiership.
Yeah. He's definitely
he was out of contract last year, but because it was Mike Ashley, he didn't want to buy a replacement striker. So instead of letting him go for a free transfer, he gave him a new 3-year contract. But he's not good enough.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's been happening with a lot of Newcastle. Because I think a lot of their standard back four at the start of this season was the same back four we had in the Championship 5 years ago.
Yeah. So they're like... Yeah, I know you.
They seem to have... They bought the players in when we had an injection of cash. Because I think we had to clear a lot of the big name players for a lot of money. Like Sissoko went to Tottenham for 30 million. And we sold a lot of the big name, big players.
Mm-hmm.
Bought in good, honest pros to get us out of the Championship. And then we've not really replaced them since.
Yeah. Well,
And they're not all 26, 27 now. They're all like 32, 34.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you can't exactly sell them on either, and they're not as fast as they used to be. And
I think that's the best thing about this new owners that we've got now. I think they'll just basically, like, a lot of the players who are not going to play, they'll just go to another team and say, right, we'll just end his contract. You can take him for free if you want him.
Yeah. Well, I think it shows that if you stay in a reasonable place, you're in the Premier League at the time. You got a, like you say, solid-ish kind of squad that's maybe not quite good enough, but it's a good enough base to build on. And if you get the opportunity with that in place, it gives hope to a lot of other clubs actually.
Yeah, and I think that the best thing that Newcastle can do is just do what they're doing. And just sprinkle in 2 or 3 new signings every window. Because we can't do what Man City did or what Chelsea did and just buy 9 players in one go.
No, I think you should be looking to be among the pack like Wolves and West Ham next season.
I would say next season, aim for about 8th, but even if you're 10, 11, it's still a decent season.
Yeah.
And then recruit better players and then go again and aim for 6. And even if you finish 8th, it's still progress. And just keep slowly moving. It might take 5-6 years before we even get into the Champions League sort of spots. But I think it's just slow, steady progress. That's all we're looking for.
Well, look, you're Newcastle. What you could do with is probably a really good cup run. Would be really good for Newcastle.
It's like you say that, but the last 5-6 years, it's either Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool. They're the ones who win it.
This season where we've been unlucky, we started off as champions, of the league. We got 98 points, I think, last time. Our first 4 games were Liverpool, City, Arsenal, and Chelsea. Just killed our momentum. And in both cups, the League Cup and the FA Cup, we had a really good run going, and then we drew Liverpool.
Yeah.
And we've been very unlucky with that this season.
Yeah, but did Newcastle blooming draw Cambridge and get beat?
There you go. Yeah. Son-in-law's a Cambridge fan. Yeah. We're Cambridge based. Okay, Dave, I think we should maybe call it a day.
Yeah, that will do. It's been 2 hours of randomness.
If you want to do something about the music and the videos and stuff, I don't know if it's interesting to your people. We've got a gig over in Poland with the Sensible Band next month, actually.
Yeah.
So there will be some live performances from that, and I've got a Sensible EP which sold with the book. I've now got those which can be sold independently. So if anyone wants those, they've got like songs from Cannon Fodder and Sensible Soccer on them.
Put me down for what? Actually, wait there. I've actually got one, I think.
You've got one. You got it from the book thing, yeah?
Yeah.
So if people want to buy the records, I'm now selling them separately. So I can, if it'll help you, like for the people that you go out to, I can donate one for you. Can sign one and get it to you, and you can give it away.
I'm sure I had one that was signed. It might be behind my green screen.
Yeah. So if it helps you, I can give you something like that you can give away to your.
Yeah, that'd be absolutely amazing.
Yeah. How many people are to at the moment? How does it work on your podcasting? How is it going?
The podcast itself, I don't really promote the podcast, but I do like a video version of the podcast, and that gets on average about 1,500. It's not a lot, but
Well, that's all right.
views.
That's all right. I mean, what I'm thinking is we can do some kind of a competition or draw or something, and I can give away one of these records signed.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Maybe that'd be nice. So, yeah, that's something we can definitely do.
Yeah, we can talk later.
Yeah.
So, I will say thank you, John, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love talking to you.
Yeah, me too.
And hopefully, no delays, no setbacks. Sociable Soccer will be released towards the end of this year.
That is the goal. That will make this year a success. Yes.
And it's all I can say is, if the player movement, the ball physics, the passing, because it actually, I don't know how to describe it, but it actually like fizzes, like pops to where you want it to go.
At the moment,
it just feels so good.
Yeah, I must admit, I've been playing it a bit whilst we were talking. Funny enough, I'm kind of like testing and playing it as we're talking, and yeah, it's quite nice and leisurely. There's a couple of things I'd like to correct on the animation, more than the feel of it. Actually, the way the animation works, it's because we're looking at putting these new player models in now. We've got to tie that up against the animation. So yeah, but it does. It feels the playing is really fun and smooth. It's, for me anyway, it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
So, hopefully I won't be the only person, and me and you won't be the only people, so there'll be more than two of us.
Yeah.
Well, I know that it's going down all right in Apple Arcade, so it must be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I've got friends at one of my old workplaces at Primark who is a massive Sensible Soccer fan, so I'll get him to download it when it comes out, and hopefully he'll enjoy it.
Yeah, hopefully people enjoy it, and they'll find it refreshing. These days, should be something refreshing from what they're used to. It's faster, it's snappier, and although not everyone will want that, hopefully a percentage of people will want it, and that'll be good for us. That'll become our new audience to start with, and then we'll build on that. That's the plan, really.
Yeah, and honestly, that's all you can do is release the base game in the most complete that it can be.
Mm-hmm.
Get the gameplay as tight as it can be, and then just every year build on it.
Exactly, it's a football game, so it's an annual, at least an annual update, if not more, So, what we've been doing on Apple Arcade is sometimes more, but generally a couple a year around the football updates. As the football data changes, there's 2 transfer windows,
Yeah.
So there's a lot you can do with football games if they work to a regular calendar.
You could even be like horrible and sort of like say like charge £5 for the game, but every 6 months when there's a transfer window, you have to pay like another £10 to get the update.
You have to pay Kylian Mbappe's wages every 6 months.
Oh God, I wouldn't like to think of that. Was it like £1 million a week?
It's £1 million a week plus 100 million signing fee. It might have been €1 million, to be fair to him. But yeah,
I don't blame him. I'd sign that.
Well, who wouldn't? It's offered to you. What are you going to do? Say no? No, it's not enough. I know.
That's crazy. Absolutely. How can they afford it? That's the scary thing. How can they afford it?
Oh yeah, exactly.
If they don't win the Champions League this coming season, it's not good.
It's quite funny that you've got City and PSG both desperate to win it, and unfortunately, Liverpool and Madrid are the two teams whose name always seems to be on that trophy and who believe that it's their trophy to win. Both of those clubs believe it's their trophy to win, and it's ended up Liverpool, Madrid, and I always think they have an unfair psychological advantage on everybody else, and whereas City and PSG seem to have the opposite.
For me, last thing before we go, right?
Yeah.
For me, the reason why Liverpool and Real Madrid stand more chance of winning the Champions League is because, yes, they're a brilliant football team, but their front sort of strikers in midfield, they're more like counter-attacking.
Yeah.
So they absorb the pressure then go. Whereas Man City and PSG, they're much slower paced to pass around and move, and they have to work into space and get into areas.
So they put themselves out of position a little bit to do it, you mean?
Yeah, so was it Man City that they haven't had a striker all year, just about?
No, they're going to get Haaland now, but yeah, they haven't. No.
But they seem to want to get the ball, pass it around, but they don't seem to break. They're still passing it around, doing little flicks, like what Arsenal used to do. They wanted to score the perfect goal.
I must admit, I love watching City. I mean, as a Norwich fan, they're not going to play that. But of all the teams, I like watching them the most. I've struggled all my life to want Liverpool or Man United to win a match, and that won't go away. I'm noticing at the end of the season, I find myself supporting Chelsea in a match, and I don't really even like Chelsea that much. They're just, I guess it's my age. They're the two clubs that dominated everything the most, and I find it very hard to,
I think for me, I'm not a big Liverpool fan because when I was at school, there was a lot of the school classmates who they all were Liverpool fans.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why are you supporting them? But,
yeah.
So, very last question. In all of this football games that you've made or had hands in, have you ever inflated Norwich's stats?
I don't think so, no. I think maybe you can set them on the side of optimistic, but not actually properly inflated them. I don't think so. I mean, we used to be better in the days when Sensible Soccer was out. We've kind of gone backwards a little bit since then. But no, no. They are really that good. Okay, Dave.
All right, John. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
I bang with one up gaming, drop more hits once I'm famous. The best, that's what our aim is. All platforms, what your game is. To the leaderboards, I'm coming. See me in a shooter, I can promise I'll be gunning. When I hit the music, try to swear I'm gonna run it. Can't take one up, you can try, but we done it. Let's go. Alright, let's go to the best place for reviews I know. Xbox One and PS4, Wii U as far as consoles go. They do handheld PCs, merchandise for you and me. Contest that you gotta do, the prizes are for gamers who going hard all day. We really the boys cause you're just that great. Can't lose, there's too much at stake. You're a certified badass when you play.
I bang with one up gaming. I bang with one up gaming.
I bang with one up gaming. Drop more hits once I'm famous. The best, that's what our aim is.